Shabbat Shalom. I'm so delighted to be here tonight, Rabbi Sarah Reines, leading services with my wonderful colleagues, Rabbi Sarah Sapaden, Cantor Sarah Anderson, our summer cantorial intern, Madeline LeBeau, and of course we have our musicians, Jack Cohen and Meg Okura, and our wonderful choir to help us as we join together in our voices and sing and celebrate Shabbat. I'm here tonight after having been away for some vacation, and a friend said to me this morning, doesn't it kind of stink to go back to work after vacation? And I said, you know what, who doesn't like a break from work? But I have to say, when I walked into the building a couple of days ago, I felt really happy and blessed that when I come back, I'm so happy to be at the place of my work. And that also made me think, as I was preparing for tonight, how lucky and how blessed we are as Jews, that every sixth day we have a full day of rest. It is like a sacred vacation for us all. So whether you're here from out of town on holiday, or you're here and you're working in the city, right now we are all on vacation together. So let's take a moment to really embody that wonderful gift. Let's take a deep breath in and just gather in all the sweetness and rest and wonder of this Shabbat. And then let's exhale everything we don't need. I see some tension, so I think we need to do it a couple of more times, okay? But we all get the idea now. So we're going to breathe in rest and relaxation, and exhale whatever keeps us from that. If at any time of our services tonight you find some of your work week thoughts creeping in, just return to that breath, that centering breath, reminding us that we are all on a sacred vacation today. Throughout the service, we hope that you will feel free to participate fully in any way that is comfortable to you. Any Hebrew is transliterated. If it's a new melody, please sing along. If it's an old melody to you, please sing along as well. There are going to be times in the service when we're going to invite people to stand. Obviously, only do that as you're feeling comfortable and able. And we continue now by greeting the Sabbath with the kindling of the Shabbat lights as we continue with the blessing on page 52.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav letzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
So Shabbat has arrived, or perhaps we have arrived in Shabbat. And if we're journeying together, we should know who we're with. So let's just take a moment and turn to those around us and perhaps seek out someone who you do not yet know and greet them and introduce yourself with Shabbat Shalom. We are going to sing our way into Shabbat by continuing on page 57, Yismechu Hashamayim.
ישמחו השמיים ותגר הארץ ישמחו השמיים ותגר הארץ ישמחו השמיים
השמיים
ירם הים ומלוא
ירם הים ומלוא
ירם הים ומלוא ירם הים ומלוא ישמחו ישמחו השמיים ותגל הארץ ישמחו ישמחו השמיים ותגל הארץ יעלו שדי וכל אשר בו אז ירננו כל עצי יער יעלו שדי וכל אשר בו אז ירננו כל עצי ישמחו השמיים ותגל הארץ ישמחו השמיים ותגל הארץ ישמחו השמיים ותגל הארץ ישמחו השמיים ותגל הארץ לפני אדוני קרבה לשפוט הארץ
צמל בצדק
ועמים באמונתו
ישמחו השמיים
ישמחו השמיים ישמחו השמיים ותגל הארץ ירם הים ומלוא ירם הים ומלוא ירם הים ומלוא ישמחו השמיים ותגל הארץ ישמחו השמיים ותגל הארץ.
Perhaps in body, most certainly in spirit, we rise and continue on page 105 with Baruch Hu. Not just on Shabbat, but every day our prayers have us celebrate creation and having been created. We continue in the Hebrew, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim, b'chokhmah poteach she'arim u'v'tvuna mishane itim, u'machalif et hazmanim misader et hakochavim, b'mishmerotehem galakira kirtzono. Bore yom v'layla golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or, u'ma'avir yom u'mevi layla, Umavdil ben yom uven laila, Adonai tzevaot shemo. El chai v'kayam tamid yimloch aleinu le'olam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai, hama'ariv aravim. Together on page 106. When justice burns within us like a flaming fire, when love evokes willing sacrifice from us, when to the last full measure of selfless devotion, we demonstrate our belief in the ultimate triumph of truth and righteousness, then your goodness enters our lives. Then you live within our hearts, and we through righteousness behold your presence. We read together in Hebrew and English. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one.
Shema Yisrael,
Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam
ואהבת את
Adonai Elohecha bechol levavcha ubechol nafshecha
ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Page 108. I, the Eternal, have called you to righteousness and taken you by the hand and kept you. I have made you a covenant people, a light to the nations. We are Israel. Our prophets proclaimed an exalted vision for the world. Hate evil and love what is good. Let justice well up as waters and righteousness as a mighty stream. We are Israel, schooled in the suffering of the oppressed. You shall not oppress your neighbors, nor rob them. You shall not stand idle while your neighbor bleeds. We are Israel, taught to beat swords into plowshares, commanded to pursue peace. Violence shall no longer be heard in your land, desolation and destruction within your borders. All your children shall be taught of the Eternal, and great shall be the peace of your children. We are Israel, O God, when we proclaim you, the God of freedom, as did our ancestors on the shores of the sea.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני מי כמוך נהדר בקודש נורא תהילות אוסף אלה נורא תהילות
Cause us, eternal our God, to lie down in peace and to awaken each morning to renewed life and strength. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Help us to order our lives by your counsel and lead us in the paths of righteousness. Be a shield about us, protecting us from hate and war, from pestilence and sorrow. Curb also within us the inclination to do evil, and shelter us beneath the shadow of your wings. Guard our going out and our coming in unto life and peace from this time forth and forever. Blessed is the Eternal, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all people, and over Jerusalem.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם ביני ובין בני ישראל אותיר לעולם ששת ימים אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ וביום השביעי שבת Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu ve'imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Leah Elohei Rachel Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora העליון, גומל חסדים טובים וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם,
Eternal God, the power of your Spirit pervades all creation. When we open our hearts to you, we are filled with your strength, the strength to bear our afflictions, the strength to refuse them victory, the strength to overcome them. And then our will is renewed, to lift up the fallen, to set free the captive, to heal the sick, to bring light to all who dwell in darkness. Add your strength to ours, O God, so that when death casts its shadow, we shall yet be able to say, O source of blessing, you are with us in death as in life. Please join me on the top of page 113. Our God and God of all ages, grant that our worship on this Shabbat may be acceptable to you. Sanctify us through your commandments that the serenity of Shabbat may enter our lives. Teach us to be satisfied with the gifts of your goodness and grateful to rejoice in all that you bestow. Purify our hearts that we may serve you in truth. Inspire us to preserve Shabbat as our heritage. May it ever bring rest and joy, peace and comfort to our homes. We praise you, God, who sanctifies the Sabbath.
Adonai Eloheinu.
The Talmud teaches, those who have the ability to protest the conduct of members of their own house and do not do so are held accountable for the behavior of the members of their house. Meaning, we cannot stand idly by. For more than half a year, hundreds of thousands of Israelis, the equivalent of 70 million Americans, have come together at the close of every Shabbat in an impassioned effort to save their democracy. They are protesting the government's plan to radically weaken the Supreme Court, the only independent check on political power. The government has responded by having police officers turn on them with water cannons. These weekly protesters represent a wide spectrum of political, religious, and economic backgrounds. Holding Israeli flags aloft, they cry out in one voice, Demokratia, democracy. This Tuesday, in response to a rushed bill that could completely outlaw courts from even reviewing potentially unethical or dangerous decisions made by members of the cabinet or government ministers, Israelis of all walks of life in the middle of the week immediately took to the streets. The situation is dire. A group of veterans comes to protests with a truck, sets up a long row of tables, and unfurls an enormous scroll of paper with the words of the Declaration of Independence on it, and they invite people to sign. Detractors claim these former soldiers, many of whom have defended Israel in multiple wars, that they and the other protesters are anti-Israel. Nothing is further from the truth. In fact, just the opposite. This movement is demanding that the country return to its earliest principles of democratic Zionism. This is the Israel that we promised ourselves and the world. This is the Israel that our siblings are fighting for in Israel every single week. We can support them right now by praying. Let the foundational words that are at the core of Israel's existence as a modern state, and they're at the core of what they are bringing in the fullness of themselves at every protest, be our prayer of support. I will share with you now these words from the Declaration of Independence, and you can offer your support by concluding with Amen. The state of Israel will be open to the immigration of Jews from all countries of their dispersion, will promote the development of the country for the benefit of all its inhabitants, will be based on the precepts of liberty, justice, and peace taught by the Hebrew prophets, will uphold the full social and political equality of all its citizens, without distinctions of race, creed, or sex, will guarantee full freedom of conscience, worship, education, and culture, will safeguard the sanctity and inviolability of the shrines and holy places of all religions, and will dedicate itself to the principles of the Charter of the United Nations. May it be so. Amen. In Israel and all throughout the world, we feel the sharp edges of brokenness. And some of us in our personal lives feel that pain as well. Some of us personally are suffering with illness or with challenges to our body, to our soul, to our mind, or perhaps there are those dear to us who are experiencing that challenge. I invite us all now to think about anybody who might need a prayer of healing, and just together, if you would like, to offer their names. We continue by offering this prayer of healing on page 125. Sometimes the deepest and truest prayers come in a place from which there are no words. So now we take this moment for us to all enter our own sacred spaces of being as we continue within ourselves privately.
Shabbat Shalom. Earlier this spring, in honor of Women's History Month, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton was invited to speak at Montclair State University. In her speech, she addressed the marvelous advances of women in her lifetime, saying, "When I was in college, when I was in law school even, I could not get a credit card in my own name. I could not have borrowed money in my own name. If I had gotten pregnant, I would not have been guaranteed employment. There was no Title IX. There were schools that I could not be admitted to, jobs that I could not be given. And that was not that long ago." It's true. The strides women have made over this last century are nothing short of astounding. Today, there are so many doors, both professional and personal, that have been flung wide open so women can now walk through in dignity and strength. And yet, despite this remarkable progress, former Secretary Clinton reminded her audience that we are not at the finish line yet, not even close. As she added, "I came today with a sense of concern about what lies ahead, because for every advance that women have made, we are living now at a time when there is a concerted effort to push women aside." The statement is borne out across countless sectors of our lives. For example, despite women representing more than half of the college-educated workforce, the wage gap between women and men sadly persists, with women still making 82 cents on the dollar earned by men. And for women of color, that number is significantly less. And despite women earning almost half of all law degrees, women still only represent 19% of equity partners at law firms. And despite tremendous gains in the last congressional election, women still only make up 28% of Congress, and that's an all-time record. And despite women coming so far in terms of gaining autonomy, agency, and dignity under the eyes of the law, the recent Dobbs decision has gravely limited all of that in one fell swoop. Indeed, the story of the women's movement has been and continues to be a story of hard-fought victories and deeply felt setbacks. This week, we see a version of this same story articulated in our Torah portion, Parashat Matot Maseh. Here, inscribed upon the parchment of our past, we witness an astonishing victory for women, followed almost instantaneously by a jarring and profoundly dispiriting setback. The story I'm referring to is that of Tzlafahad's daughters, Machla, Noah, Hogla, Milcah, and Tirzah. Many of us heard about these 5 inspiring women last week when Cantor Anderson delivered her exquisite Devar Torah. But for those of you who may not have heard, or may simply want a refresher, here are the bullet points. The story of Tzlafahad takes place in the final year of the Israelites' wandering. As this new generation prepares to enter the land of Israel, God requests that Moses take a census and apportion the land accordingly. The census lists the leaders of each tribe and their progeny, and this is where we learn that Tzlafahad has no sons, only daughters. Tzlafahad's family structure presents a problem here because daughters don't inherit land. Property travels from father to son. It's a devastating prospect for these women, knowing they will lose the entirety of their inheritance simply because they're not men, and they do not count in the current legal system. Facing tremendous odds, the daughters approach Moses and implore him not to give away their father's holdings. Immediately upon hearing the women, Moses takes the case to God, who astoundingly agrees with the daughters, stating the plea of Zelophehad's daughters is just. Transfer their father's share to them. God then creates a general rule for all Israelites, proclaiming, if a man dies without leaving a son, you shall transfer his property to his daughter. Not only do the daughters manage to salvage their father's name and inheritance, but they inspire God to reconsider the plight of all daughters in the same situation. This is a wow moment in our Torah, and it represents a victory of staggering proportions. But this week, the story of Zelophehad's daughters continues, and it is quite a different story, let me tell you. In reaction to the daughters' tremendous triumph, there is equally tremendous anxiety amongst the male members of their tribe. They're worried about Zelophehad's land and what will happen to the land should the daughters want to marry outside the tribe. They say to Moses, if they become the wives of persons from another Israelite tribe, their share will be cut off from our ancestral portion and be added to the portion of the tribe into which they become wives. That is, if Zelophehad's daughters were to marry out of the tribe, their land would be given over to their husbands. And so, in language mirroring what we read last week, we see that Moses brings this case to God and says, the plea of the Josephite tribe is just. Zelophehad's daughters must marry within the tribe in order to keep their father's land from being transferred to another tribe. Not only does this rule apply to Zelophehad's daughters, but to any daughter who inherits land. As we read, every daughter among the Israelite tribes who inherits a share must become the wife of someone from a clan of her father's tribe. No inheritance shall pass from one tribe to another. The 5 daughters dutifully comply with this new rule, marrying their cousins and keeping the land within their clan. With that, all potential disruption has been reined in and all chaos smoothed over, and no one need fear the revolution that Zelophehad's daughters almost ignited. For many contemporary readers, it's hard to feel anything but disappointment in this outcome. After witnessing the daughters' remarkable achievements in last week's portion, it's upsetting to see these achievements erased by the prevailing patriarchal norms of the time. As scholar Jacob Milgram observes, by marrying their cousins, the daughters don't really inherit the land. By transferring that land to their father's family upon marriage, it's simply going to the very same men who would have inherited it had the daughters not claimed the land in the first place. As such, after they marry, the daughters seem to find themselves right back where they started, without any land of their own to speak of. Even so, some commentators claim that this addendum to the Zelophehad story is less about limiting women's power and more about emphasizing that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Rabbis Lisa Edwards and Jill Berkson-Zimmerman explain, amending the rule for Zelophehad's daughters teaches, in a society or a family or a community, one person's needs and desires must be weighed against the needs of others. final authority should not belong to one member only, nor should laws be made based on the interests of only one party. But let's be honest. The original ruling on behalf of Zelophehad's daughters wasn't only about the needs of one party. It was about all women who suffered financially by virtue of their gender. It was about all women who felt disenfranchised in this ancient Israelite society. And it was about all women who were rendered powerless by the law. When Zelophehad's daughters lose their exclusive claim to their father's land, it feels like a loss for all Israelite women. And here again, we are reminded that with astounding victories, there often come equally astounding defeats. In her rousing speech at Montclair, Hillary Clinton called upon the audience to remember a sage piece of advice that she learned from her mother, which was, when it comes to women's rights, there are no permanent victories or defeats. That is, no loss is insurmountable, and no win guarantees the future forever. The struggle for justice must continue regardless of any outcome, good or bad. And we must never give up the fight, no matter how demoralized or drained or despondent we feel. I want to end tonight not where we started, but rather a couple of biblical books later, in Joshua, which is the very first after the conclusion of our Torah. Once again, we hear about the apportioning of Canaan and the story of Zelophehad's daughters. Here they are again. It reads, "Now Zelophehad, he had no sons but only daughters. The names of his daughters were Machlah, Noah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Tirzah. They appeared before the priest Eleazar, Joshua son of Nun, and the chieftains, saying, 'God commanded Moses to grant us a portion among our male kinsmen.' So, in accordance with God's instructions, they were granted a portion among their father's kinsmen." Here in this later book of our Bible, there is no mention of the daughters' husbands, no mention of the daughters' need to marry within the tribe, no mention of any constraints whatsoever. The final word on this episode is a word about the daughters' triumph, and that triumph alone. Our tradition, subtly, but also explicitly, is telling us there are no permanent victories or defeats. Even in the face of setbacks, the daughters' struggle for fairness and equality continues, and their battle for justice wages on. Adonai oz le'amo yiten. May God strengthen and support each of us as we strive together towards righteousness. Amen.
Adonai oz le'amo yitein. Adonai oz le'amo yitein. Adonai yivarech. Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. Adonai oz le'amo yitein.
rise and turn to page 231.
Let us adore the ever-living God. We render praise unto you, who spread out the heavens and established the earth, whose glory is revealed in the heavens above, and whose greatness is manifest throughout the world. You are our God, there is none else. ואנחנו הורים ומשתחווים ומודים. ונאמר להיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ.
Page 243. It is a fearful thing to love what death can touch. A fearful thing to love, hope, dream, to be, and oh, to lose. A thing for fools this, and a holy thing to love. For your life has lived in me, your laugh once lifted me, your word was gift to me. To remember this brings painful joy. 'Tis a human thing, love, a holy thing, to love what death has touched. With hearts full of love, we turn our thoughts now to those who are no longer with us. On this Shabbat evening, we hold especially close those who left us during this past week, as well as those who were taken from us at this time during seasons past. Though they may have departed this earth, their memories abide eternally. Tonight, our temple community remembers with affection the following individuals: Betty Asher, Malcolm Babin, Andrea Bachner, Harry Belgorod, Saul Berliner, Sylvia K. Brownstone, Robin Laurie Charney, Valerie Gervin, Elsie Goldberg, Gerald M. Gulkin, Michelle Kahn, Ruth Pearl Kahn, Robert Allen Klein, Shirley Klonsky, Harrison Kravis, Arthur Kugelman, Joseph Linden, Joseph L. Mailman, Samuel Mandel, Beatrice Marcus, Jerry Marks, Lionel Allen Marks, Andrew Mendel, Robert M. Morgenthau, Nancy Flagar, Sidney Putter, Lenore Shelsky, Arthur Siegel, Sid Siegel, Marilyn Sire, Gertrude Seewoff, Robert Smeets, Herbert A. Starr, Gussie Strauss, Jason Tatunik, Howard Teitel, Robert Van Buren, Richard Weinstein. We invite any of you who are in recent mourning to please rise that we may acknowledge your loss. We invite those of you who are observing a yahrzeit, the anniversary of a beloved one's passing, to rise that we may acknowledge you. And now we rise together as one congregational family to recite the words of our Kaddish prayer on page 245. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, ve'alma divarach chirutei ve'amlich malchutei, b'chayachon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dachol beit Yisrael, ba'gala u'v'zman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehi shemei Rabbah mevarach le'alam u'lalmei almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kudsha brichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehi shalama Rabbah min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, uya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru. Amen. And we ask that the source of peace on high send peace and comfort to all of you who are bereaved, and solace to any of you who may be in mourning at this time. And together we say, Amen. Well, Shabbat Shalom once again. Whether you joined us here in our chapel or tuned in online, it was a pleasure to share Shabbat with you. As always, Temple Emanu-El is a house of prayer and study and connection for all people, and all who would gather with us in peace are most welcome in this house of God. A few announcements for the upcoming weeks. Join the Men's Club at Citi Field on July 18th when the Mets take on the Chicago White Sox. Reserve soon, tickets are limited. And on Wednesday, July 19th at 7:45, the Stryker Center presents Mary Poppins on our roof. And while this event is currently sold out, there are still spots available on the wait list. Given the fact that so many people are away during these summer months, now is the perfect time to sign up to volunteer at the Sunday lunch program or to be a Shabbat reader or for any number of our temple mitzvot. Please remember that our daily sunset services are available online Sunday through Thursday at 5:30. And for more information about these events, about any of our ongoing programs, both here or at our downtown campus, and so much more, just head to our website, emmanuelnyc.org. And finally, for those of you who are here with us in person, we would kindly ask that you leave your prayer books at your seats prior to leaving. I would invite you now to turn to page 246 as we join together for our Kiddush and our Motzi.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hakafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, אשר קידשנו במצוותיו ורצה בנו ושבת קודשו באהבה וברצון הנחילנו זיכרון למעשה וראשית כי הוא יום תחילה למקרא קודש זכר ליציאת מצרים כי הבנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים ושבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנהלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz.
Our closing song this evening will be Adon Olam on page 254. Please rise as you are able, and please join us in singing.
Adon olam asher malach b'terem kol yetzir nivra le'nasa v'chefzo kol azay melech shemo nikra ve'acharei kichlot hakol levado yimloch nara
Behu haya,
ve'hu hover ve'hu
Betiv bara.
ve'hu echad ve'ein sheni lehamshiro lehavira
Leishit,
ve'litachlit ve'lo ha'oz
Mizrah.
ve'hu eili ve'chai goli tzorchem li ve'tzara ve'hu
Nisi umanos li,
ve'nat
kosi
kosi
reyom ekra.
בידו הפקיד רוחי בית ישן והעירה ועם רוחי גביעתי אדוני לי ולא אירא. יברכך אדוני וישמרך.
May God bless you and keep you.
יאר אדוני פניו אליך ויחונך.
May God's radiance shine upon you and within you, and may God illuminate your path with radiance and love.
יישא אדוני פניו אליך וישם לך שלום שלום.
And may the warmth of God's presence always be near you, to strengthen you in moments of struggle, to support you in moments of strife, and to embrace you in moments of triumph and joy. Amen.
Shabbat
Shabbat Shalom.